Hi, I'm Michael Bridling from the Nashua Telegraph. I cover education, and today we are here with the 5 candidates for the Nashua Board of Education to have a forum to discuss the issues facing the school district and why they're running, and to tackle a number of issues. Here today with me is Spencer Lowry and Tatiana Naya, Nashua High School South journalism students. And essentially what we have here is a 5-candidate race for the Board of Education. It's a 4-year term. There are 5 open seats, so essentially all of our candidates here today will be elected. But as I think we can all agree, it's still a healthy thing to do, to get together, talk about the issues, and just kind of go through and see what's important to the candidates that are running. So I'm hoping to start today out by having each of the candidates introduce themselves, talk about why they're running, and then we'll kick it off with some of the questions. So Elizabeth, if you could start us off.
Thank you. I am Elizabeth Van Twyver, and I'm running for the Board of Education because I have a deep interest in education. I'm from the private sector. I worked 40 years in the computer industry, developing courses and manuals for the computer industry, and I understand how important it is to have a good education. I am a product of the public schools through elementary, through college, and I am concerned that we're not producing as many excellent students as we once did years ago. I have seen a lot of changes. For the last 7 years I worked at Rivier College for Sodexo and dining services, and I saw some of the students that were coming through that used poor language and all were not seemed to be very disciplined in their studies. So I do have a very deep reason for running. I want to make sure that every child has a good education, and not only the affluent, but those in the less affluent areas of our city, and that the schools are safe for everybody, that no one should be afraid to come to school. There's a lot of talk about bullying in the media today. I want to make sure that that does not happen to any child, that they should come and be able to enjoy learning. Teaching someone to learn to love to learn is setting them right for their entire life.
My name is Stephen Haas. I'm running for my 2nd term of Board of Education. What prompted me to run for my 1st term was watching on TV the discord amongst the existing Board of Education. And I was hoping that we could try to bring more stability to the Board of Education and therefore to the national school system. I was looking for at that time to create a strategic plan for the school district so that we would have a roadmap, if you will, of where we thought the school system should be going in the next 5 to 7 years. We've been able to accomplish that this last term, and I hope that we will continue that going forward. About a year ago, the Nashua Telegraph indicated that they thought that Mr. Conrad and the Board of Education had done an outstanding job in bringing stability to the Nashua school system. And I take all credit for that. No one else on the board did any work for it. But obviously, I'm one person, but we did have a board this last term that has worked extremely well together, and I look forward to more great things in the next 4 years.
Hi, my name is Kim Smith-Muse. I decided to run for the Board of Education for a number of reasons. I grew up in Nashua. I love the city. I attended all the public schools, including this one that we're in today. And I thank the students and the video production people for allowing us to come in, because I do agree with Mike, it's still important to talk about the issues. I have 2 children still in the public school system. One's a junior and one's a 7th grader. And as I started way back when they were in elementary, becoming active and dealing with parents and students and teachers, I saw a number of issues that were of concern and really made an effort to talk to people. And I felt like I'd like to see some of those issues addressed. I'm a financial accountant. My background and my specialty is process accounting, which I'm lean certified, which means you tend to delve deeper into processes to find areas of waste and concern and things of that. So I thought at the same time, my specialty may help with the system.
And I'm Bill Mosier. I've been with the board for the past 4 years. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be re-elected. And I am of a concern for the students, and I think that reading and writing and science is so important in today's world. And we have to make sure that as Elizabeth said, that children have not been able to read properly. But if you don't read properly, you won't be able to write properly. You won't be able to understand the math. You won't be able to understand the science. And it's very, very important. And I am grateful for the opportunity to serve on both the curriculum committee and on the policy committee, where we generate the rules and regulations that operate the school. And with this board being as working so well together, that we have been able to accomplish a lot. And I look forward to the next 4 years where we can even do more.
Robert Hollowell. I'm currently president of the Board of Education, so I'm running for re-election. And one of the reasons I'm running for re-election is I think we've been very successful over the last 4 years at moving this district forward in a time when we're actually generally losing funding. So we've had to come up with interesting ways to come up with funding and to use the funding that we have in a more effective manner. And I think we've been able to do that. I think there's been a lot of hard work by a lot of people on this board to make that happen. We have all of our union contracts settled well before their expiration date, which I think is a huge goal that was reached for this board, something we didn't want to repeat from the last time. And I have 2 kids that have gone through this system, one that's out and actually in the working world, and my daughter is a senior here at South. And I see every day the positive things that happen in this school district. I also, being on the board, learn a lot of the things that we need to do better. And I'd like to spend another 4 years helping the district move forward. Thank you.
Now, one of the Board of Education's primary responsibilities is obviously approving a budget for the school district. Describe to me the approach that you would take to crafting a responsible budget, and whether you see areas either that need to be added to or cut that you feel that you would bring approach to the board that you would bring. Elizabeth?
Well, I've looked at that budget, and it's very complex. It would take me a while to understand all the things that go into making up that budget and how the money is really applied in the school. I just don't want to do anything that would compromise the quality of education that we have and the classroom. So I have 8 other people on this board that would help me understand where these cuts could be made, and taking information from teachers and also the administration I think is important. So there'd be a lot of research to do, and I'm really concerned about that. How much money is going to be coming into the school this year, and for the next couple of years. We're in deep financial times, troubled times, so it's going to be a challenge, but I'm willing to do the work to find out where we can cut without hurting the quality of our education.
Well, I acknowledge we have some challenging financial times. Before I start cutting anything in the budget, I would want to make sure that we have analyzed our expenses and determined or found out if there's any way we can be more efficient with the money we have and more productive in the classroom. One of the areas that I think will be important for us going forward is professional development for our teachers. It's important that we raise scores in our school system, but part of that is having teachers that know how to teach and can teach well and can teach with the new tools that come forth in the 21st century. So that's an area that I think we need to spend some time focusing on. It's a difficult challenge, and we go through the budgeting process, getting input from employees, citizens, and teachers to get their sense of where money is best served. And with that input, we obviously end up crafting a budget that I think is one of the best that we can do with the funds we have.
Well, and the budget is definitely the most expensive area that the school board, I think, has to deal with. What I'd like to see is us to delve down deeper into it, starting with committees within the school systems, within the actual schools, say elementary school, middle school, with teachers, parents, citizens if they want to come out, and have in committees them find areas that they think can be cut. You know, I think it's very hard for a board to sit around a table and find areas that far deep down that can be cut. What concerns me is we cut off the top. We're going to cut the REACH program. We're going to cut athletics. You know, we're going to cut the hockey team, or we're going to cut teachers here. And I think as we continue to cut off the top, that's when we hurt the students the most. And we've seen class sizes go up, and I'm not in favor of larger class sizes. I'm definitely against it. But I think if we involve more input, we might find areas that we didn't know exist. The other area I'd like to see is for us to capitalize on combined spending with the city. Contract areas, everything from maintenance on your copiers to buying pens and pencils. We do this in the private sector as a company. We consolidate all our resources and buy from one vendor at a cheaper price. And that's an area that I'd like to see explored.
Okay.
No, I'm not really in favor of doing a lot of cutting. We cut pretty much down to the bone now. And we've had to look to alternate means for resources to keep the teams going. The uniforms for the athletes and for the band have come from private sources. And there's just so much that you can try and cut. You can, if you cut from the top, you hurt, as was said. And if you cut from the bottom, you can't cut the bottom off a ladder, because then the whole thing falls down. But we have problems with such things as the special education and the increasing number of children that require specialized services, which eat up a tremendous amount of money. Another thing is with the English language learners and getting parents involved with their kids. We suffer from the scores because there's not many parents out there that are really involved with their kids in making sure that the homeworks are done, that they attend the meetings at the schools, they make sure that the children are there on time and attend. It has been a constant problem over the past few years to get the attendance up where it's supposed to be. And we have so many other things to look at. And you just can't cut. We have to depend on the administration. Mr. Conrad has done a wonderful job in identifying areas, and then he brings it to us to see what we think and if we can debate it and approve it. If not, we cannot take away from the kids. Like I said before, reading, math, and science are so important in today's world. We have to depend on this. We have to go after this. Very, very tough.
So there's a few areas that I think we need to look at. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've done an excellent job actually at reducing our energy needs inside the district, which has saved us from double-digit increases in energy costs. And I think we can do more in that area. The teachers' contract that we just signed saves the city a great deal of money in terms of healthcare costs, not just in the sense of premiums that are being paid by teachers, but also some of the fundamental plan design changes that were made that can help to drive people to make better choices. And I think we need to do more in that area. In fact, one of the things that comes out of the union contract is a joint board and union committee that is looking at ways that we can incentivize teachers, things like choosing generic drugs over name brand drugs, Things like choosing cheaper MRI services as opposed to just going to the one that's chosen by whoever your doctor recommends. There's not a huge amount of savings in those areas, but there's some, and I think we're looking at trying to save around the margin so that we don't have to do things like remove the REACH program, which we actually restored in some sense by the money that came back from the union contract that we settled. So I think these and we're going to be looking at every possible area. I mean, the challenge is, number one, the budget is very large, and Elizabeth, if in 4 years you figure it all out, you'll be better than all of us, because there's a lot of areas that need to be looked at, and it's just not really possible, even in a short period of time, even in an extended period of time, looking at the budget to understand it all. But we've got to look at it all and find areas that we can trim back.
Today's school curriculum is very similar to the ones that our parents studied under. We read the same literature, use many of the same books, and we receive instruction in a similar way. Why are schools lagging so far behind?
Well, personally, I think it's because the students aren't applying themselves. We've been training people for years and years and years, and I think that we need to get back to basics. Students need to understand how to read and write and communicate, and before all the other things come into play. And I've looked at the kneecap scores, and I'm not terribly impressed with them. 30% of the school is, below proficient, and I think we need to strive for excellence. I think there needs to be more discipline applied. Schools, students should be asked to work to a higher level. Search for excellence in our education, and these teachers are there to help each student prepare for their life, and I cannot understand why any student wouldn't be crazy to take advantage of it and to apply themselves. I think the quality of the students that are graduating today, as I said, when I worked at RIV, I saw them come through, and I don't think the quality was there. I don't think the quality in my education was as good as my father's education, so I think we need to raise our standards and search for excellence.
I think I would take a little bit of exception with that statement that it's exactly the same as your parents. I think we have much more tools in the classroom today than we did for our parents' education. Parents' education was pretty much you sat in a desk, you had a teacher up front, lectured you for an hour, and you hope you learned something. Today, we have more interaction with the students and the teacher. We have computers in some classrooms. We have smart boards that allow us to go onto the internet and get curriculum off the internet, more information, more up to date. I believe we put less reliance on textbooks, and I think in the past it was, this is the textbook, learn the material. And we now in the classroom bring materials from a multitude of different areas to enhance the education in the classroom. So I think we've made some strides. We've tried to get into the 21st century as far as education, and we're getting there. But again, to some extent, it's a financial issue. We can't afford to put a computer in every student's lap, which several schools actually buy a computer for every student in the district, which may be a little bit overkill, but I think it's we need more breadth of tools for the teachers.
I think this is an excellent question, and I think it's very exciting that this question comes from students. And I do have to agree with you in the textbooks part. I do know that I have seen some textbooks come home with my children that are mighty old. And I look at the dates written on the inside cover and I chuckle to myself. So we definitely have a problem with textbooks, I believe, that they need to be updated. But there are other areas that the school district has done an amazing job. Because when I was in Nashua High School South, this room never existed, and neither did this program to this extent. So, I mean, we've made some upgrades in areas, especially in CTE programs and things of that sort. But I do agree with you with the textbooks, and I do agree that we need to update our technology. I mean, this is the century now where even as parents, we all know that the students can communicate in so many different ways and find out so much information with computers and technology, and whether it's your iPods or whatever you're using, a lot of times you find out very valuable information through those ways. So how can we incorporate things like that into your learning?
That's an interesting thought about the textbooks, or learning from what some of our parents. My dad was an engineer, and I did a lot of mechanical engineering studies and electrical and things like that through my career in transportation. But sometimes some of the things that we inherit from our parents, or from what our parents learned, they were good. They were classics. They taught us to use our mind and to visualize. Yes, we need the tools that we have today. We need the computers. We need the other things, the smart boards, etc. But some of these things that we had back then were good because we learned from them, because we had to use them. We had to use our mind. We had to open our mind and use our mind's eye to visualize what the story was about and to put together the cast of characters. And I had the opportunity, not too long ago, I got hold of my first grade reader, which was printed in 1935. Now, there's a lot of people around here that weren't around in 1935. But looking through the reader, and realized that when I was in first grade, I did learn to read. And I read the book, and I read the story, and today I look at it and I say, this was really good, because of what it did to open my mind to what was going on the written page, with the picture that was there to illustrate it. So when we look at some of the things that our parents looked at, and I feel that we would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater to say they were no good. They are good. They have a place. Everything has a place. And we can learn from what our parents learned from, as well as use the tools, the modern tools that we have now, to increase the knowledge that we have. So I say that there is a place for these thoughts and pictures and stories that our parents learned from, but we have to look at it and realize that we too have to learn the same things. Maybe not precisely the same way, but the books like Catcher in the Rye and some of the other ones, these are very good, the classics. And we don't have enough of the classics. We're too much in Twittering and Facebooks and all kinds of things like that. And we're not even learning good grammar and sentence structure, which we could learn from what our parents learned from. This is why our parents were able to communicate so well. They read it and they wrote it and they learned from it. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
So I understand what you're saying. I guess I would say I'm not sure you have the perspective. I mean, when you look around this building, I said to my son when he was one of the first students to start in this building with all the fancy equipment that's in here, that I turned to him and I said, you have no appreciation for what you have here. And that's not demeaning to you. I think your generation, you grew up with the internet. The internet was basically introduced in 1996. I mean, that's a blink of an eye in time. Schools take a long time. You've got teachers that have been teaching for 25 years, and they're very good at teaching what they teach. And I think many of them have done a yeoman's effort to catch up with technology. But things are happening much faster than they ever have in the past. And so it's been difficult to incorporate some of the new things that are going on. And I think at first, the school district, when we built these buildings, they decided they'd have 3 computers for every classroom because somebody thought, well, that'd be a good idea. Well, the bottom line is, students don't use computers while they're in the classroom. So you need one for the teacher, but you don't really need the other 2. And we've changed that now. So we're trying to allocate resources that actually make a difference towards education. So one of the things we've got is a $50,000, I think it's $50,000 grant that we give to a school where it's a competitive grant where they say, we're going to add this technology. For instance, New Searles use this technology where you can have these clickers in the classroom. So all the students can answer. You don't know which students answered what, but you can tell that some students didn't get it, some students did. And that helps the teacher because they get feedback right away. So that's a pilot program that looked like something that was useful. It actually didn't look as useful as the document cameras that they use, which allows them to show things up on the screen, much like the old overhead projectors, which I always laugh when I see those now. So I think we've added discovery streaming to all our elementary schools and added computer technology that allows them to display that. So Discovery Streaming is a Discovery channel. It allows students to see things in a more vivid way. And one other thing we've talked about doing is, for instance, in AP Literature, where you have, 24 classics that you really need to read for AP Literature, and we've got 24 different paperback copies of all those books. Hundreds of books can fit on a Kindle. And that's a very small investment per student. So that's the kind of thing. I think we are making progress. In 10 years, you'll probably look back and say, wow, there's a lot of changes that have gone on. And I think a lot of those things have happened while you've been in school. It's just maybe not visible to you because to you, it all seems ancient because you're doing things that are far more advanced than any of us did when we started out in school.
My question is, what are the 5 most important skills a high school student should graduate with in the 21st century?
I'm sorry.
I'd love to answer that one.
Could you repeat that for me?
Sorry, I have a cold.
She asked what the 5 most important skills were for a high school student to graduate with.
I put number 1 as communication skills. The ability to speak clearly, the ability to write clearly, and to communicate in a civil manner. I think that's most important. I belong to a public speaking organization where we teach communication skills. And for us to get along as members of this society, we need to be able to communicate very well. So reading, writing, arithmetic to me are very, very important. I'm from a technological background with my work in computers, and I think that it's dynamite. We would never have had this sort of thing in our schools when I was a child. And it's good to have that, but you have to have the basic skills, because if the computer goes down, if the network goes down or whatever, you have to rely on yourself to communicate. And I think those are very, very important.
Well, I think there are 3 basic skills. One is how to read, to write, and be able to do mathematical calculations. Those are the basics of what you're going to use every day in your life. Beyond that, I think students need to be able to take a broad spectrum picture of the issues and be able to think creatively, look for solutions, and not just accept what is presented to you at face value. The ability to do critical thinking and also to work as a team. I think when you get out into industry, you'll find that you don't very often work all by yourself. You need to work with a team. So being able to be a team player is a skill that you're going to need to be successful when you're in the workplace.
I would agree with Mr. Haas. First of all, math, reading, the students know. These are important things. Study habits are another thing if you're going on to college. Study habits are so important. But aside of your basic skill sets that you need when you leave high school, and we know we're not tackling those the way that we really should be, especially math, and math is very important. I think you need to be able to communicate. You need to know where to gain resources when you need something. Where do I go? Where do I find this? How does my community work? Looking for a job. Do I know how to go about that? If I'm not going into college, how do I look for a job? I mean, these are basic things. How do I get along in my community and know how to get help when I need it? So lifestyle, life skills are important. The other thing is teamwork. Most companies now work in some type of team atmosphere. And knowing how to get along with people when there's conflict and when there's not, sharing ideas and coming up with good solutions is really important.
Excuse me.
You know, these guys are a tough act to follow. They've said just about everything there is to be said on, you know, the skills that are needed. I'll just add my 2 cents worth in here and say, well, okay, number one is reading, because if you don't know how to read and you don't know how to, you know, understand what you're reading, you're going to have a problem. If you can't communicate in a civil fashion, you're going to have a problem. You have to have the basic math skills, at least basic math skills, so that you can balance out your checkbook at the end of the month. You know, that's one of the things that's very important. But also be able to find the area of a room, you know, that's 10 feet square, and be able to multiply side by side to come up with the answer. And also, I would say that it's important to have a degree of social studies and civics. How many people that I see, you know, just on television, where they kind of have fun with these people, that they don't know the vice president's name or how he got there, and they think that they don't know who their state representative is, they don't know who their congressman is, or they don't have any idea of how the government works at all, and yet they can stand there and blame anything and everything in the government, but they don't have any clue of how it works. You know, just the idea to get a bill passed. I spent 2 terms in the state legislature, so I kind of got there because the wife of one of our former mayors, and boy, you know, like being on the school board, it's a constant learning curve to know how these things work. But if you have the basics of it in school and you come out with it, at least you know something about how the government is, how it works, what your state government is like, and the modus operandi of your city, and the federal government. You know, even your congressman, you should be able to name him and have some background on him. So, you know, this is a very important part of what you're going to need when you get out of school. I mean, besides the math and the communications and the reading and everything else, they're all part of the life skills. Like Kim said, life skills is very important. And if you don't have it, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage.
So I won't repeat. I mean, some of them are obvious, the reading and writing, math. One of the things we talk about in our strategic plan is being a lifelong learner. That's our goal. So I think what a student needs when they get out, they need those basic skills, but you need to learn how to learn. So it's really not that important that you know, you understand when America was discovered and how the atomic bomb was created. The point is, you know how to find out that information, you know how to analyze that information, and make decisions based on what you find. Because I'm guessing everyone that's in this room right now that's a student, you may have an idea of what you think you want to do with your life, and I'm guessing 90% of you won't do that. So while you're learning things that are specific to the particular area you want to go into, what you're going to find is, as you go through life, and I think your generation more than any other, you are going to change jobs many times. I've been lucky. I've worked at MIT Lincoln Laboratory for 25 years. That's unheard of in today's environment. You work for a company for 4 or 5 years, even working for the federal government. People bounce around from area to area. So the important thing is to have a skill where you can analyze a problem and make decisions based on that problem that might be completely outside of the scope of where you are right now and what you want to learn.
Okay. During your 4-year term, you're going to be asked to approve a new teacher's contract. The current contract would expire in the next 4 years. My question is regard to the area of the contract relating to teacher compensation. As you probably all know, the way teachers are paid currently, they're all paid the same based on their years of experience and their degree attainment. My question for you is, do you feel like that's a fair system for teachers to all be paid equally regardless of their skill? And if not, how would you measure that in a way that would be able to differentiate among the teachers, paying them based on the skill they bring to the table?
Well, I come from private industry, and I've seen the budget. The contract, and I'm very impressed. I should have gone into teaching instead of in private industry because I think they have some wonderful benefits. It's very hard to take anything away from teachers or anybody once you've given them a benefit. But I never got paid for my sick time when I left the industry. So I have to give the teachers credit that they were able to negotiate the contracts that they have. But I'd have to look at it. I'm new to this, and I hate to see anybody have to take benefits away from them. So it's a tough question.
Well, I had the opportunity to get paid for my sick time when I left my employer, so I should have picked a different employer.
I guess so.
That question is the tip of an iceberg. Clearly, length of service in a position has some worth to it. Having an additional degree has some worth to it. Is everybody performing to exactly the same level to get the same compensation? Probably not. The difficulty here is what you're asking about is teacher evaluations and how you go about doing teacher evaluation. And that's a conversation that is going to take a lot of conversation. We've talked about having an incentive program or a bonus for teachers if we think they've done a great job or administration singles one out as being exceptional. The problem is we don't have the space, the flexibility in the budget to put in extra compensation. So it becomes somewhat of a budget issue. It also is a significant administration issue to make sure that we have an effective evaluation in place, and it has to be a broad spectrum of evaluation. This can't be just the kneecap scores because that's only one, and I could go on for a long time about how kneecap scores, but I don't have an answer for that, and it's one we're going to grapple with, that I truly believe we will grapple with in the next 4 years, because some people believe that teachers have great compensation, great benefits, but you'll also find out that I think the average tenure of a teacher is normally 4 to 7 years, so that they leave. There are some that stay for a long time, but there's a great deal of them that turn over. And we need to be able to make sure that we can adequately compensate the ones who are really the bright stars and be compensated.
Okay.
I think this is a very wide question, and you have a lot of area here that really needs to be looked at. Of course, we want to compensate people for their job they do, their performance. And I deal with a union, I work with a union, I've done union contracts, but when you have a union and you have a situation with a large group of people, such as teachers, then it makes it a lot more difficult to evaluate that group of people, which is why you tend to get the various levels or steps that are based on how long the teachers have been there or what different levels of education they have. That's why you tend to get that area of compensation. I'd love to see it based on performance, but somebody develop a system that's really fair to judge their performance. I mean, you can't judge it off of students, because look at the test scores. We're not even quite sure what that information is giving us for accurate data, so that wouldn't work. We have, thousands of teachers. How are you going to have an HR person go in and evaluate every teacher? It's not practical. So the idea is, how do we develop a system that both the teachers would be comfortable with, administration would be comfortable with, and the taxpayers would be comfortable with? So we kind of get back to the area that we have. Education is worth something. I mean, if you have a master's degree or a doctorate degree, that's worth something in this country. So I definitely agree in that. If a teacher is going to do something above and beyond, and they're going to take advising a club or take a group of students to do something else after school, I believe that's worth something. So unless we can develop a solid alternative, we have what we have.
Bill?
The compensation for teachers is a very difficult thing. It's when you're dealing with the union. Union, I think, tries to put everybody in the same box, and just where you reside in that box, that's where you get compensated. I feel that it's teachers have to stand out in some way. And whether it's their own personal education or their performance, it's very difficult to estimate the compensation required for a teacher. Now, there's compensation that may be desired, which would be the union's point of view, but then there's the compensation that would be deserved, which would be based on the teacher's performance, the longevity, number of factors. You can't even place it on performance too much, because if you go by the scores of the students, every student is different, and you're not going to have a cookie cutter situation where every student is going to go to Mrs. Brown's class and everyone is going to get a 90%, and everybody marches out of there, look, Mommy, I got a 90% on my test. It doesn't work that way. Every student is different, and you can't say that the teacher taught differently to that student than to the other student who got a higher score. So that's an area that is difficult to estimate. The value of a teacher is very high. I agree. I am a former teacher myself in adult education, and I saw the great variety of adults that came looking to learn computer electronics, and some of them, when they first set foot into the class, they didn't know how to change a light bulb, let alone understand what the electrons were doing in a computer. So you can't compare the performance, the test scores, or anything like that, because everybody's going to be different. So I think that evaluating a teacher is going to be a very difficult thing, because there has to be some genius out there who's going to be able to come up with a formula, some kind of algorithm, or something that is going to be able to plug in the teacher's name and address and telephone number and say, oh yes, they get a raise. I don't know. I have no idea. Right now, I have no idea whatsoever how to get a good evaluation on a teacher.
So first, let me thank the teachers union for the last negotiation. I don't want to rush to the next one before we recognize that The teachers in this school district gave up a great deal in terms of benefits for their health care compensation in this last contract, with a very nominal increase in pay. Moving forward in terms of the area of evaluation of teachers, I think there is a way we can do this. You don't do it on absolute test scores. You look at how students progress. Did a student grow in a particular teacher's class? We have this information now. I can tell you that if we went through that data and talked to PTOs and said, name the teachers that you think are the best teachers that we have, we could see that in the data. So the thing is that you're not talking about a compensation system that has to be perfect. You may have tiers. So let's say you may have 3 tiers of teachers. You may have excelling teachers, then you've got a large range of teachers that are operating at sort of your normal range, and then you've got teachers at the bottom where the first thing you want to do is, you've already made an investment in that teacher. You want to give them bigger professional development areas for them to look at. You want to find out what the problem is and help them, because you don't want to go through the process of hiring a new teacher and getting them all back into the system again. So I think there are ways that we can do this. I don't think that the scores, the growth in scores is the only thing that you use in a compensation system. You use evaluations by principals. I think you also use a peer review board. So you have a set of teachers that sit on a peer review board, and when an issue arises, say the test scores show that these set of teachers should be looked at further, the peer review board would be the one that would be responsible. So that way you're engaging the union. I think that's the only way you move forward on this issue, because you are in union negotiations. If there are going to be unions, management doesn't have the right to just decide how they're going to do this. We need to work with the unions to make it happen. And I think there are elements of the union that agree with this, that want to see differences in compensation. It's funny because we actually have what you might consider a performance-based system. The argument was made that teachers that have been here longer and that have higher degrees perform better than those that don't have those things. That's why they're paid more. So really all you're doing is talking about changing some of the metrics that you use. I personally don't think that getting your master's degree or having 20 more credits towards your degree should qualify you to move up the ladder as much as it does. It may have some benefit. I don't think the research really backs up that it has a huge amount of benefit. So I think we should look at those things that we can say, how do we invest in teachers that are doing poorly so that we can help them move along? And yes, maybe eventually, if they don't improve, you have to say, you need to find a new career because this isn't working out for you. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question.
The legal dropout age was recently raised to 18. Why are taxpayers footing the bill to educate students who don't want to be in school?
Well, I'm going to pass on that one, I think. I'll let you go ahead on that one.
Because the state government says we have to. It's kind of a simple rule. We, though, are trying to look at alternative ways for those students between 16 and 18 who don't have a desire to sit in a classroom. We're trying to identify, we have identified opportunities for them to continue their education, either through an extended learning opportunity or through an evening program. So whether they're 16 or 18, I think they still need a level of education to be productive in their community. Excuse me. We have to, and we are in the process, we have identifies ways to keep those students engaged till they become 18. And further than that, we hope that they will eventually get their high school degree, whether it's through a test score or a diploma. They need that document to continue their career.
It's a good question. I've heard a lot of debate on this, both with parents and students, which I find encouraging because students are thinking about this. Why are we cutting areas with students that want to be in a classroom and want to learn because we're focusing on a group of students that don't want to be in a classroom, and we're hiring officers to go find them and bring them to school or bring it to court. But Mr. Haas is right. We have to. The state government has told us that this is the situation, and the law was passed, and you have to follow that. Having said that, I think we do need to find different areas where these students can go and have some type of program that will benefit them. Obviously, if they don't want to be in the school and they're disrupting other students from learning, that's a problem. And we don't want that to happen. But sometimes you see these students wake up, I want to say, at 20, 22, and decide they do want to go get their GED, or it's difficult out there and they need to find some path in life. So you never want to give up on a child either. I mean, I had a grandmother who was a teacher in this district for years. And after she retired, she went to the Adult Learning Center to teach kids that wound up there. And she said it was funny because they didn't want to learn when they were in the school system, but when they got out in the real world and found out how difficult it is to feed and clothe yourself, then they decided, well, it was more a necessity. So you never want to give up on anybody. How do we find an area that they can go? I'm in favor of in-school suspension. If we can keep them somewhere in the school, give them suspension, but make sure they're still doing work, I'm all for that. If we can find a program at some type of job function type of program, I'm all for that. But I don't want to see the classrooms disrupted for the kids that really want to be here.
Yes, keeping the kids in school is difficult, and I think the state was pretty much on the money when they raised the age to 18. However, I don't think that there's been enough data compiled as to the reasons why these kids wanted to leave school. Some of them, they felt that they could earn enough money to buy that new car, or they could do something else, or maybe they had family problems that required them to leave school. It could be any number of reasons, but we, as a district, we have looked at keeping the kids in school by trying to find out what makes them tick, what turns them on to something, whether we could get them into an alternative high school or an extended learning opportunity or an apprenticeship in some kind of business or some kind of trade learning process where they can, maybe they don't like being in the class, but we can get them into a learning opportunity by, say, learning carpentry. And at the same time that they're learning carpentry, they're learning the math and the reading that goes with learning carpentry. Or like in Bob's case, he's a scientist. He's been with MIT for a long time. He's into meteorology. Perhaps there's some place in meteorology or some other aspect of the science that really ignites the person's intellect, so to speak, that we can zero in on that and expand on that by giving not only the physics, the mechanics, the science, the math, the required reading and everything, and combine it into that specialty that has ignited their intellect. And I think that's what we have to do, is find out what it is that ignites somebody's intellect. Since I was a kid myself, my dad was an engineer, and they had purchased a set of books for me, which was the Wonderland of Knowledge I think I read them through cover to cover about 10 times. Well, okay, maybe 8 times. But I learned so much from those books. And when I had questions, I could go to my dad and he would answer. And I think that's what we have to do, is look for, you know, getting these kids excited about something and then following up on it.
So I think the answer to your question is we shouldn't be. And that sounds cruel, but I think one of the things we put in our strategic plan is it's not just the responsibilities of the school districts and parents, it's the responsibility of the student. So the student has to want to learn. You can't teach anybody that doesn't want to learn. You might be able to find a way to engage them, yes. So the problem I have with the legislation from the state is that there's no middle ground. You must teach every student until they're 18 years of age, no matter the expense that we may have to go through in order to make that happen. So you do end up expending resources on somebody that maybe when they're 20, they will decide that they want to move forward. But I don't think we should be mandated to do that. I think it should be a goal that we teach students until they're 18, but at some point we should be able to say, look, this isn't working for us. If you want to return sometime when you're willing to engage, great. I do think the district has done a good job at trying to engage those students in that area with some of the inventive things, even taking them out and doing GPS tracking and things like that, sort of an outside experience for them in order to gain credit.
I have about 5 minutes left.
May I just make one comment? I agree with you wholeheartedly. Sometime in your life you have to take responsibility for your life. And at 18 years old, if you don't want to be in school and you don't want to take advantage of the things that are available to you, then bye-bye.
Well, it looks like we're out of time here today. I want to thank the 5 candidates for the Board of Education for coming out today. I want to thank the video production students for directing and producing this program. And I also want to thank the 2 students from the Nashua High School South journalism program for taking part. I want to thank you for watching on the Education Channel 99, and don't forget to vote on November 8th.